So sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We think these are our friends, right? So just when you think you know your friends. So Gary was this guy that I used to buy drugs from. He was my main drug connection so that I could support my drug distribution business, which was the only occupation I had when I was 19 and in college. I lived in an apartment complex and he lived across the way. My boyfriend and I, it was 1980, I just want to say. Some of you weren't born. And so this guy lived across the way with his girlfriend and 4 kids. My boyfriend and I were both 19. He was 23, she was 21. When they weren't working, we spent all our time together. Because if there was one thing that my drug dealing mentors had taught me, it is keep your connections small and tight. Meaning not very many people, but the ones you have, they better be close. You need to trust them. And so we did. I mean, we spent a lot of time together. He was all this, we were very close. So, Penny was a friend of my cousin's who was 16, and Penny was a 16-year-old stripper who had been evicted from her home when she was 14, and she made her way by trading her body. Not necessarily as a prostitute, she was not a prostitute, but at 14 years old, she needed food and shelter, and she hooked up with this man who was way her senior, perhaps 25 years old, and he was abusive. He gave her a roof over her head and then shuttled her off to the stripping job that he had gotten for her when she was 15. Yes, highly illegal, but they did it anyway. Penny had only, in the week before, come to my house with her one bag full of possessions, all of her worldly possessions, escaping the man, and coming to me because my boyfriend had gone to jail, consequence of being a drug dealer, and I did not want to be alone because God knows what happens to young women living alone. So my cover job, which everybody should have if they're a drug dealer, was working at a convenience store where I was at this one night when Gary, my neighbor drug dealer, his brother came in, who was handsome and charming, and he chatted me up and he suggested that we should hang out when I got off shift at 11 o'clock. And I said, sure, in fact, my friend Penny is at my house. Why don't you just go down there now? I'll be there shortly. I called Penny, said, hey, this guy's on his way. I know you don't know him, but yeah, he's cool. Let him in. So she did. 20 or so minutes later, I got a call from her, not alarmed at all, and she said, could you bring home a pack of cigarettes? Sure, okay. I come to my apartment, and I'm walking towards the door, and he's coming out of the door, which I thought was strange since I was coming home and he was supposed to be there. And I'm chatting with him minutely, and I can see over his shoulder that Penny is standing in the doorway, frantically waving me in. So I was like, okay, so see you later, bye. And he goes off, and I walk to the doorway where I came, and I found Penny on the floor in shreds. And I collected her up, and she told me about the last half hour of her life where this man had raped her. And I immediately said, I'm gonna call the police. And she said, no, you can't call the police. I'm a 16-year-old stripper, assumed prostitute, just an assumption. I'm never gonna be treated fairly with the system the way it is, 1980. I don't know what's any different today. So what Penny understood, which I didn't then and I don't today understand, she had survived in a world that was unkind to her at a young age by bartering. She was accustomed to being sexually abused, meaning having sex without her consent. Yes, she had an arrangement with this man that she lived with, but it really wasn't with her consent. And that is how she survived this attack, because when this man put the butcher knife from my kitchen to her throat while he was raping her, and he began to mutter to himself as his conscience was with him and him saying, this isn't right, this isn't okay, she thought, he's not having a good time. I better make this better for him. I certainly wouldn't have thought that. So I probably would have died because I came from a world, oh, I'm out of time. Shit! I'm sorry. I'm out of time. So I wouldn't have survived because this man is now, after having recently been denied his parole hearing after 30 years in prison in California for murder, he would be shipped to Florida to live out 4 more life sentences consecutive for the 4 murders he admitted to in Florida. So the end of my story, which if I had time, was in this circumstance, sex and drugs were no friend of mine. Sorry I ran over.